Hello all you lovely people, my name is MrAlberto23 and today I decided to do a full commentated video on the Wind Waker HD any percent roll record so that for people who don't understand the game as much, they can get a full explanation so that they can understand the speedrun and all the tricks and why we do them. So the Wind Waker original was released on the Nintendo GameCube in 2002. And this is the HD version that was released on the Nintendo Wii U in 2013. It's probably one of the reasons why this game is probably very severely underrated because of the fact that it's on a lesser known console. The Nintendo Wii U did not sell that well. However, I definitely think this is probably one of the coolest speedruns you'll ever see. The main reason behind that is that the movement on this game, Wind Waker HD, is much different than what you'll see in other Zelda games. So because of the fact that we can perform the item slide glitch, that makes the movement end up being very multi-dimensional, and you'll see a lot of small optimizations here and there that save quite a bit of time, and a lot of very, very cool setups. So to start, we're going to be going over the manual super swim. So at the very start of the run, you're supposed to go through a very long intro and watch a bunch of cutscenes and watch Errol get kidnapped. However, you can skip all of that by leaving outset. So this is supposed to be a game where you sail to get from one location to the other, but you can super swim by performing this glitch known as the manual super swim. So what I'm doing is I'm turning around and pausing the game and unpausing. So by pausing and unpausing, I'm letting one frame go by. And so if you turn around on every single alternate frame, you can chain together speed, because every time you turn around, you gain -3 units of speed. And Nintendo didn't cap negative speed in the water, so you can just do this indefinitely to gain indefinite speed. And we're still limited by our air gauge in the bottom right corner. Whenever that reaches the bottom, which is empty in 30 seconds, we run out of air and we drown and spawn back on outset. So this is designed to keep us from sequence breaking. However, if we go near the rock after getting a bunch of speed, we can refresh our air, because when there's land beneath Link's feet, it will refresh his air gauge because it thinks Link is on the ground. So we're gonna get a bunch of speed and refresh our air once, and then I can put the camera in a state where it will constantly go behind Link, so I can simply just hold up to gain a bunch of speed. So Link at this point is gaining speed every single frame, so 30 times per second, because of the fact that every time I hold up, he'll go behind the camera and then the camera flips 180 degrees, allowing you to repeat the process indefinitely. But that requires enough speed for it to work, which is why we pause buffered at the start, in order to get enough speed for Link to travel behind the camera in one frame. And so after getting another air refill by going near the rock, I can hold very slightly on the analog stick right outside of the neutral dead zone in order to preserve my speed. Because if you just release the stick or hold all the way down on the analog stick, it will make you lose speed a lot faster than doing this. And this is what's required in order to have enough speed to reach Dragonrise early, effectively skipping the entire intro. This trick saves around 19 minutes. It is certainly one of the biggest sequence breaks. It's certainly one of the biggest sequence breaks in the game. And because of how much we skipped, you can see this cutscene looks kind of weird. Normally, the King of Red Lions is supposed to be in this cutscene talking to Link, but we haven't watched the cutscene of beating Forsaken Fortress for the very first time, where we failed to save Errol and meet the boat. And so because of that, the boat is invisible. I do want to mention real quick a glitch that you won't be seeing in the speedrun, but it's important to mention because of how powerful it is in the GameCube version, and that is the storage glitch. So in the GameCube version, you can use the Wind Waker to get storage by diving while holding the item and then canceling it 3 frames before you reach the ground. And that will activate a glitch known as storage, where you can store different events and get very useful properties, but it's not seen in the speedrun because it was patched by Nintendo. This trick is used to skip all of the boulders, that jump that I just did right there. by jumping onto that rock, you have enough height that you can jump off of it and grab that ledge, and that saves quite a bit of time over bombing all the boulders on Dragonrise Island. And we're not going to be seeing any glitches used until we get the grapple, which is in another at least 10 minutes. So the fastest movement on land that we'll see in most scenarios is rolling. So by repeatedly tapping A, you kind of get the point. We keep pressing A, and that will make Link roll. And you have to do it until we get the grapple. And I had it. I was on low 46 pace, and then... You may also notice the text. The text is not in English. We're playing on the Italian version of the game. And so the reason we're playing in Italian is that this text moves the fastest, but there are no Italian specific glitches. It's just because the text moves the fastest. Now in the GameCube version, the fastest text was Japanese. And that's because Japanese has the fewest characters, which is still true in this game. However, in remaking this game, Nintendo decided to speed up all the text from 1 character per frame to 4 characters per frame, except they decided Japanese was too fast and needed a nerf, so they didn't speed up Japanese, and now Japanese is the slowest language. And so because Italian was the second fastest at that point, and Japanese got a big nerf, that makes Italian the fastest language. But Italian is pretty annoying to play on because of the fact that the languages, some of them are region locked, meaning only certain regions for the Wii U can play certain languages. And the game itself has different versions. So the version of the game required to have Italian is the European version. So I'm playing on a European copy of the game, which is different from a North American copy. For a North American copy, you can actually change the language to Spanish, which is not that slow. It's only a few seconds slower than Italian. There it is. Italian is also annoying because not only do you need a European copy of the game, you also need the console to be region changed to European, which can be achieved with homebrew. So like it wasn't working before and now it's working. That's so weird. Like why was it not connecting? All right, it's working now. You may also notice that when I do equips, I'm not pausing the game, because in the HD version of the game, you can use the controller that I'm holding, which you can't see, the gamepad, which kind of looks like an iPad. It's a very big controller, I will say. You can use the touchscreen to swipe items to equip them without pausing the game. And so that ends up being kind of a challenge to equip items while moving the character. So I have to be very nimble with my fingers. Because there's no Ethernet connection. After doing a side quest, we're going to be getting the bottle from Medley. And that's important because the boulder on Link's right can only be bombed by a bomb flower. It does not work with normal bombs, which is kind of weird. If you try to do it, it just won't work. It won't explode. And so the bomb flowers in the area are withered and require a bottle, and you need to get water in the bottle and pour them on the bomb flower in order to use the bomb flower on the boulder. There is another bottle I do want to mention, and we've been theorizing for a long time whether we could use this bottle. It's located in the Bomb Island submarine. And it's annoying to get because of the fact that we have to super swim to the submarine and beat all the enemies in the submarine and get it from a chest. But then we have to super swim again to Dragonrise Island. So this extra super swim ends up losing so much time because of the fact that it takes us about a minute to pause buffer to that speed. Now you may ask me, if you've seen the GameCube version, why don't you just do the speed gain unbuffered? As you may, if you've ever seen a GameCube version of the speedrun, you may notice that the players don't pause buffer. They simply flick back and forth on the stick, and they can gain all their speed without pause buffering. And so that, in theory, would work in this game. However, the problem is that the method they use in order to avoid the neutral dead zone of the stick, which loses Link a lot of speed whenever you hit that, it's different in this game because the neutral dead zone is so big compared to the GameCube version that it doesn't work. Meaning pause buffering is our only option, and it's so much slower that it ends up not being faster to get the bottle. However, in a task of this game, you will see the speedruns get the submarine bottle, and you'll see them skip the delivery bag cutscene because the delivery bag was only useful to get the Medley Bottle, but you can skip it with pause storage, which we'll see later. But instead, we're just going to get the bottle from Medley and enter the dungeon this way. Streamer obsessed with splitting things. So this dungeon, this is the first dungeon in the game. I don't have a splitter. Because of the fact that we sequence break, we didn't get a bunch of items we're normally supposed to have at this point, such as the hero's tunic, which is the green tunic, the sword, and the shield. But luckily, we can get around that because, for one, the sword, which is the most important item, we can get around by picking up objects in the dungeon and throwing them at enemies, and then they'll drop their weapon. And so in this room, we threw the pot at the bokoblin, making him drop his stick, and then we could use the stick to light the torches. And luckily, because every single room in this dungeon has something that Link can carry in his hand, we can skip using sword in every single room. Thank you, Nintendo. I have one, it's a splitter, but there's a lot of small optimizations in this dungeon. For one, you may notice that whenever I'm holding an object, I'm side hopping. That's because you can't roll while holding the object, and so the second fastest movement option on land is side hopping, and you can do that while holding an item. So that ends up being the fastest movement option while carrying an item. Another small movement optimization here is rolling as the boulder explodes, which puts Link at the door because he moves during the cutscene. In addition, this pot throw normally triggers a cutscene whenever the very first platform is formed. But if we put the camera at that specific angle, that cutscene cannot play, skipping the cutscene. Another optimization that you'll see in this room is throwing enemy weapons. That's because it's faster than running up to the fence and swinging the sword, because the sword moves a lot faster if you throw it. Not hub, but an actual split. Wait, so is what I have a hub? I don't know what it's called. I need USB. I need, yeah. Well, either would work. Either Ethernet or, actually no, I need a USB splitter. So there's not really much going on here. I will mention, in this room, you see that I side hop onto the switch, which is slightly faster than hopping up onto the switch, because it's a faster animation. Then I would have to just buy another one, because the Wii U doesn't have an Ethernet port either. And coming up is still not technically considered a glitch, however, the mechanic can enable a glitch. And that is climbing up while Link is normally pushed back after climbing up in this area right here. We can perform a frame 1 roll before he's pushed back by the wall to jump from that position to get across this gap, which is slow. It's faster than slowly moving across. Also, throwing bombs against walls makes them explode faster, so that's why we throw the bomb at the wall there. So that jump that we did there, that same mechanic of performing a frame 1 roll after climbing up will be used to clip out of bounds in areas, because if you climb out of bounds, if you climb while partially clipped into a wall and then roll into the wall on the very first frame available, it will clip Link out of bounds, and that's called a roll clip. And that will be used later in the speedrun, so stay tuned. I don't have an Ethernet plug at all. I have a MacBook Air. Another optimization, out of all the small optimizations I've mentioned, is rolling off the side of a block, which you saw at the beginning of this room. We'll see it one more time. Oh, goodbye, Rat. Rolling off the side of the block allows us to grab the ledge faster because it skips a jumping up animation that Link normally does before climbing. So it's another small movement optimization. No, I think that's that. There goes gold. I think that's. So in all, in Dragonrise Cavern, I will say the way runners lose time is little by little. It's pretty unusual to see runners lose a lot of time at once. It's usually from very, very small mistakes, and so that makes Dragonrise Cavern challenging because every single room requires very fast corner turning and movement changes in order to get through the room very, very quickly. Who's Rathia? So I do want to mention at this point, but while I have time, that we're not going to be beating the Dragonrise Cavern. We're going to be just getting the dungeon item, the grapple. And the reason we care about the dungeon item, the grapple, is that it allows us to enable the most powerful trick in the entire game, the item slide. So once we can item slide, we can really start breaking the game. The item slide is a glitch that allows us to gain speed indefinitely. Whenever you hold a first-person item, such as the grapple, the boomerang, the bow, and the hookshot, if you move in a direction, pause, and then hold slightly in the opposite direction, and unpause, it will start multiplying your speed by 1.2 every single frame until eventually the game will crash if you charge speed for too long. And this is an HD exclusive glitch because in the GameCube version, you can't move around in first person. This is another very, very major difference between the GameCube version and the HD version, which we're about to see. So another important thing I want to mention is that normally you're supposed to beat all of the dungeons in order to beat the game. But later we're going to be performing a very big sequence break known as the barrier skip in order to get to the end of the game very early. And so that skips needing to beat any of the dungeons. So instead we're just going to get the dungeon item, the grapple, and leave. And when we leave the dungeon, we're not going to be leaving normally by just exiting the dungeon. It's faster to save and quit and go to the title screen. And normally that takes you to the start of the dungeon, but that's actually not what will happen. When we save and quit, it will take us to outset. That's because by skipping a bunch of early game flags that normally set your spawn location to the start of a dungeon, instead our spawn location will be default outset. And so this was probably designed to prevent you from sequence breaking early in the game by making you stuck on outset until you leave outset. But this is useful to sequence break even further because now we can leave the dungeon quicker. So when we save and quit, we go to outset. So this is the grapple. This is the most powerful item in the game. At this point, we're going to start seeing a bunch of item sliding. So now we're going to see a lot of item slides because it not only does it replace normal movement, so item sliding is faster than rolling. If you need to item slide the distance of 3 or more rolls, it's faster to item slide that distance. Plus, we can use it to super swim. So what we can do is gain a bunch of speed on land and then slowly lower ourselves into the water, and that allows us to keep that speed in the water, allowing us to super swim. And so for our very first super swim, we're going to be heading toward the submarine. By the way, you're supposed to sail, so item sliding allows you to sequence break a lot because you can go to any island that you want to, which normally you're not supposed to be able to do that unless you sail there. And so there we went into that submarine, which had moblins with lanterns. And so unlike the one in Dragonrise, these are carrying lanterns. And so these are designed to throw Link in jail if he doesn't have a sword, which we didn't get the sword because we skipped all of the early games, so we still don't have the sword yet. He's a bot. And so that's useful because this Forsaken Fortress is not located on the overworld. We can't simply super swim there. And so that is one of the very few ways of getting onto this map. Here you're going to see I clip through this wall because you can gain a lot of speed with an item slide and clip through walls. And so that's going to be seen later. And also, item sliding is just generally really fast for getting around and makes the movement very interesting in my opinion. We're going to be skipping all of the indoors areas by item sliding to get across the dungeon. So if we gain enough speed with an item slide, we can hit target right there. We hit target with enough speed to travel all the way across the gap in 1 frame. My mommy said so. And so we can also travel across these cyto gaps in 1 frame with item sliding. So we get enough speed and then we can move forwards with our momentum to skip that gap by jumping across it. And same here. And I grapple this bokoblin here to skip the cutscene of the fight starting with the spikes raising. And we get the sword. We had to trigger the sword, which is why we went down the stairs at the very, very start, was to trigger the sword, because we do need the sword. But instead of fighting the bokoblin, I'm going to be performing an item slide clip. This is a very precise clip in order to get into the door, because we can't open it. if we opened it, we wouldn't be able to perform the glitch that we're about to do, which is known as pause storage. So after clipping into the door, we're going to set up a spin attack so that we open the option menu on the same frame as triggering the loading zone, which, as I mentioned, this does not work unless you are clipped into the door, because the timing of the option menu coming out does not line up with the loading zone if you're opening the door. It only works if you are clipped into it. And so by opening the option menu while triggering the loading zone, this activates this glitch known as pause storage. So pause storage requires the Pro Controller. That's why I was playing on the Nintendo Pro Controller, which is different from the Nintendo Gamepad in that it's a lot smaller and a lot more like a GameCube controller. So on this controller, if you open the option menu, normally it pauses the game. So that prevents you from progressing any further because the game pauses and the option menu comes up, and then you can invert the camera or turn gyro aiming on and off, or you can switch controllers or turn the HUD on and off. You get it, a bunch of different options, right? But if you trigger this on the same frame as moving into a loading zone, that pause will be overridden by the loading zone, and the option menu will stay up even on the other side of the loading zone. And that's very useful because now the cutscene is playing with this option menu up, and it covers the screen, so I can only see what you see while playing. I can see Strumenti and I can hear the game. So until we activate the glitch, until we are finished with the glitch, the game is going to be completely hidden, which will end up requiring some blind movement later. So later on in the cutscene, when we meet the boat, we can switch controllers using this option menu, which is at this point is invisible. You can't see the options, but they are there. We can navigate, switch controllers. So I just switched to the gamepad, and then on the gamepad screen, now because the game is paused, I can navigate to the save option using the analog stick, save and quit to the title screen, and bam, we just skipped a minute and a half cutscene of talking to the boat. And now you see the boat is triggered, and that cutscene changed my save warp flag. So now when I save and quit, I go to Windfall. So from now on, when we save and quit, we're going to go to Windfall. And so now we're going to super swim and go to this island. This is the this is the Thorn Ferry Island. And we're going to clip on this tree to get into the fountain early. Normally you need the skull hammer to open up the fountain, but by item sliding, we can go underneath the ground and reach the loading zone early. And we're going to do this clip not just for this island, but for another island. And so these two islands have upgrades. So these ferries are designed to increase your bomb count. First, you're supposed to have your bomb count and arrow count. And rupee count, but we're not going to that fairy fountain. This one increases our arrow count, but we haven't gotten the bow yet, so actually it's going to give us 60 arrows. So normally you're supposed to have 30 arrows when you encounter this fairy, so that's why it gives you 60. And then the next one you encounter is supposed to give you 99. So we're going to save and quit. Once again, that takes us to Windfall after we go to the title screen, and that's going to allow us to leave the island a lot quicker. And then we're going to go to the other island, which is Eastern Ferry, clip in, same deal, and get the bomb upgrade. So these two upgrades are very, very important because we're going to be getting items out of order, where normally you're supposed to have gotten the Tower of the Gods bow before getting the light arrows bow, but we're not going to be going to Tower of the Gods. Instead, we're going to be getting the light arrows. And the game does not give you a quiver with the light arrows bow. It only gives you a quiver for the Tower of the Gods bow. So if we were to skip these upgrades, we would have 0 arrows. And same thing with bombs. We're going to be not getting bombs from the pirate ship, but instead we're going to be getting bombs from a bomb drop that we're going to pick up in Ganon's tower, which will give us the bomb item. But once again, it doesn't give us the bomb bag. So this is required to get the bomb bag so we can carry bombs. And for the quiver, we got that in order to carry arrows. So very important to get these two upgrades. And once again, we're going to save and quit, which will take us to the title screen, and that will spawn us back on Windfall, which is important because you can't even leave that island. You're normally supposed to bomb the boulder, but I didn't bomb the boulder, so I would have just been stuck in the island. So here, now we're going to super swim to Dragonrise Island. So Dragonrise Island is important because we need to be on this island when we perform this trick. So we're going to enter Beetle and exit. And this is going to change the boat location from Windfall to Dragonroost. And then we're going to void out in the ocean by swimming all the way out of bounds, which will spawn Link in the boat. And that's important because when you spawn in the boat, that changes your save warp flags to the final version, which is what you normally see throughout a game, where when you save and quit, you go to the nearest island. And so we wanted to do this at Dragonroost because Dragonroost is the only island in the entire game where you can save and quit at sea and go back to the island. Otherwise, if I did this at Windfall, I would have had to very slowly cruise back to the island because I don't even have the sail. So that's why we did this at Dragonroost. And now we can super swim to Forest Haven. Forest Haven is the final stop in this grocery list of items we have to get, and that's the leaf. The leaf is important because it gives us a magic meter, which is important for shooting light arrows later. To get into the island, we're going to be performing a skip, where we skip the entire area over here by clipping underneath the water to the bottom. And then until we swim to water that's over Link's head, Link will be underneath the water like this, which skips the entire swinging through from platform to platform up top. And here we're going to once again activate pause storage on this loading zone by opening the option menu on the same frame as triggering it. Now we're blind, and we have to navigate all the way to the cutscene with the Deku Tree blind. So this requires very difficult movement where we have to rely on audio cues only. And then we have to defeat all of the chews while blind. And this presents a challenge because normally when you press the B button, it closes the option menu, which will get rid of the glitch. It will cancel the glitch, which is not good because we need to press B in order to swing our sword at the chews. But luckily, if you hold either up or down, it will cause the menu to be in a constant scrolling state, where if you press B, the B press does not leave the option menu. And that is what we use to swing the sword at these chews repetitively, and we'll charge a spin attack repetitively because it deals a lot of damage to the chews. And after the fade out, the cutscene has started, we can switch controllers and save and quit, which will skip this cutscene, which is about 2 minutes long. So it's a very, very long cutscene we skipped there. And when we save and quit, now we go to Forest Haven because, as I mentioned, our save flags are now back to the normal save flags that you'll see for the rest of the game. So when we save and quit, we're at Forest Haven. Once again, enter, and then there will be no cutscene this time. The leaf will just be spawned because we already watched the cutscene. And we can go get the leaf, and that's it for Forest Haven. Once again, leaf is a very, very important item. Not only do we need it for a magic meter, because we do shoot light arrows in this run, but also the leaf is used later for the Morph Hover. So the Morph Hover is used to skip getting the hookshot. We'll see it later, but we need to have the leaf in order to blow the Morph. So it is very important to get the leaf. You will see the task skip the leaf. It is possible, however, it's not very RTA viable. The uses of leaf that you have to skip are: 1, using the light arrows to get past Phantom Genin to get to Grand Staircase. That can be skipped by performing a very precise parry to get onto the top of the door. By the way, this jump here is used to skip the last bulb. I did land on the platform, it just was invisible. So we're very far ahead. So you can skip that usage of leaf on Phantom Genin by performing a very precise parry and then clipping out of bounds. And that's not very RTA viable, however, it has been done. And then on Grand Staircase, you can clip out of bounds to skip fighting enemies, or you can simply just fight them with sword, which is slow. And then Puppy Ganon can be skipped without leaf by hovering to the top and then performing a frame perfect bow shot on the Morph, on the keys. So all of that is not RTA viable, plus you have to do it twice because we skip cutscenes. So not very viable, but you will see it in a task of the game. So here we've gotten everything we need and we can beat the game. So we need to go down to Hyrule, which is where that final dungeon, Ganon's Tower, is, and we can get there early by performing the barrier skip. So there's supposed to be 3 trips down to Hyrule. The first one is by Tower of the Gods, which is not an option because it requires us to beat 2 2 dungeons and get all 3 pearls and place them, which is very slow. However, this way, the second trip down to Hyrule is very, very fast. We can skip the Phantom Ganon trigger by going around it, and then we can clip into this door right here. And that allows us to skip getting the Skull Hammer, which is required to open the door. And so we like to call this the door clip. Now, this setup looks different from the first time where we performed a door clip. That's because there's collision underneath the ground that stops Link that makes this trick a lot easier than the first trip. So this is a much easier version of the second one. And once again, you're going to see that pause storage glitch where I am going to set up a position and spin attack so that I move forwards and trigger the loading zone at the same frame that I open the option menu. And then the cutscene triggers here, and so this cutscene will actually always trigger every single time I enter the loading zone, which is why you saw me switch my save flags to the nearest location by spawning in the boat, because the only way to skip this cutscene is to have those fixed save flags so that when I save and quit, I go into the Helmrock fight. Otherwise, I would spawn at Windfall, and then if I tried to re-enter this room, the game would crash. Because the second time this cutscene plays, the game crashes, and it always triggers on the loading zone. So here we're going to skip the Helmrock fight. So by having Helmrock push you out of bounds, you can clip underneath the floor, and then jump onto this area out of bounds, and then jump past the spikes, and navigate to the next area, which skips the fight. But luckily that works because we can't even fight Helmrock anyway because we don't have the Skull Hammer because we skipped it. And so this is the longest cutscene in the game that is not skippable. I'll explain in a second why we can't skip this cutscene. But first I want you to notice that Link is holding different things than he did before, which we didn't get these items. He's holding the Master Sword, the Hero Shield, and he's also wearing the Hero's Tunic. Now this is what he's normally supposed to look like at this point in the game. So you don't necessarily notice that the game just gives you these items, but it is programmed to do that. Even if you don't get these items, it gives you them for the cutscene. But for some reason, we don't keep Tunic. We only have it for the cutscene. But the Master Sword and the Hero Shield, we do keep. Now, why is this cutscene not skippable? Because you did notice that I skipped a bunch of different cutscenes with pause storage. This is another example of one that's not skippable because of the fact that this cutscene takes us down to Hyrule. So we can't save and quit until we're in Hyrule. Otherwise, for example, if we save and quit at this part of the cutscene, this map, if we save warp on, we go to Windfall. So that's not useful because we need to be in Hyrule. So that's not helpful. Then the second part of the cutscene where we're in the Tower of the Gods area, which by the way, we haven't raised Tower of the Gods, so it'll be invisible. That is called the Add Mummy map. And that map, if you save and quit on, you go to the bell at the top of Tower of the Gods. Not helpful either, especially because we haven't raised Tower of the Gods, so Link would just fall all the way to the ocean because there's no floor beneath him. That's not useful either. And lastly, the very, very last cutscene in Hyrule. That cutscene will keep replaying until you have watched the very last frame of the cutscene. So there is not a single part of that cutscene that you can skip either, or else it'll just simply replay. So that means that there's a 4.5 minute long cutscene in the middle of the run just to allow you to just refresh, regather your energy. But none of this is skippable, but it's very cinematic. And a lot of them aren't really that hard. Like, password skip sucks to learn. So while we're in this cutscene, I do want to start explaining the barrier skip. So this is the biggest sequence break. As I mentioned, normally you're supposed to beat a bunch of dungeons in this game. We're not going to be beating any of them. So for one, you're supposed to break the barrier, which requires a bunch of different things. One of them is pulling the Master Sword. So that's one of the flags. There's a bunch of different flags for breaking the barrier, but because we don't need to pull the Master Sword, we don't need to raise Tower of the Gods. And so because we don't need to raise Tower of the Gods, we don't need to beat any of the first 2 dungeons. And so by performing the door clip, we were able to skip those first 2 dungeons to get down to Hyrule very, very early. And in addition, you're also supposed to go to Wind Temple and Earth Temple to fully charge the Master Sword, another flag for breaking the barrier, and you need to get the Triforce. And all of that is also skippable, because once again, we're not going to be breaking the barrier, we're just going to be clipping through it. So the barrier, the Hyrule barrier is a big cylindrical shaped wall that goes very, very, very far up. It was found that if you go and you item slide between two panels that come together at an angle, when Link reaches the center in that corner, the game will miscalculate his position and make it seem like there's a gap between the two walls because of a rounding error, allowing Link to clip through. And also there's a knockback, where if Link runs into the barrier, it will knock him back, but that's easy to skip. If you pull the Windmaker on the very first frame of getting knocked back, it will cancel a knockback. So we simply get hit and then pull the Windmaker on the very last frame of invulnerability to cancel it, allowing us to get knocked back, because every time we're outside of the cylinder, we'll keep getting knocked back. So those are the ways we skip the barrier. And so, interestingly enough, this requires you to have around 50 units of speed, which ended up being a problem for the GameCube version for a while because they can't item slide. So here we just gain a bunch of speed with item sliding. We have plenty of speed, way more than 50. But in the GameCube version, the way they get the speed is by pulling a bomb. So in the GameCube version, they will pull a bomb and drop it, and the bomb will push Link 50 units forward in one frame, allowing for barrier skip in the GameCube version. So both games have barrier skip, but they do it in a different way. Very instantly enough. So this is the very, very last dungeon. This is the last dungeon in the game. Once again, you're not supposed to come here this early. You're supposed to have done a bunch of stuff first, but because we got to this area early, and then we skipped the barrier, we were able to get to the final dungeon in the game. Which is why this speedrun even is 45 minutes to begin with. Or else, I mean, it would be hours longer if it wasn't for this. So here, we go to this area to get that bomb drop. So most bomb drops in the game, every bomb drop is supposed to become a rupee if you don't have the bombs. And now we know why. Because if you pick up a bomb drop when you don't have the bomb item, it simply gives you bombs. And so there we saw a roll clip in order to clip out of bounds. So what I did was I moved into the bomb, so the bomb pushed me slightly out of bounds, then climbed up, and then rolled on the very first frame of climbing up out of, and into the wall. And that will push Link out of the wall because of the fact that in that one frame window, Link's collision is still not being checked. Because when he's on a ledge, his collision is not checked, but Nintendo left in one frame of you climbing up where you can perform a roll, and his collision is still not being checked, allowing him to get out of bounds, and then we can leave to the loading zone. So here we're going to be getting the light arrows. This is not a skippable item in the GameCube version. We need it really for one reason, and that is to get past Phantom Ganon. Because this room that we're about to go to after light arrows, that room is only skippable. You can only get past it if either you light arrow Phantom Ganon or you use Phantom Ganon to clip out of bounds. Either way, you need the light arrows. So this is not skippable. You may also notice that normally you're supposed to beat Phantom Ganon in every single room in order to spawn the sword, which will point in the direction you need to go, but every single room, it's always in the same order. It's not randomized. So if we just memorize it, we don't have to beat Phantom Ganon in every single room. 44, 47. And so the order is back, left, straight, left, right, straight. 44 pace. Because I got better RNG there. So this is the light arrows, and once again, that's why I got the quiver, because I wouldn't be able to shoot any arrows. And that's also, by the way, why I got the bomb bag, because that bomb I got in Ganon's tower is not the normal source for bombs, so it doesn't give you a bomb bag. You're not normally supposed to get bombs that way. You're supposed to have already had bombs by that point. The cutscenes kept his frame perfect, by the way. So here we're going to light arrow Phantom Ganon. This is the only way to defeat him, and he only spawns after you get light arrows, by the way. And we're going to use that to get that sword to get onto Grand Staircase. So coming up, we're supposed to defeat all these enemies, and then we're supposed to open this door and watch a cutscene to the Papagen room. I'm going to skip all the enemies for this first time. You can clip out of bounds to skip the fight, but I will be coming back because I'm going to be skipping the cutscene. So on this pillar, you can climb up all the way to the right and clip out of bounds. Very interestingly enough, because of the way Lynx climbs up on that pillar, he clips. And now we're going to go out of bounds, and we're going to activate pause storage to skip the Papagen cutscene. So we're going to enter the loading zone on the same frame as triggering the option menu, switch controllers, and save and quit. And so now the cutscene won't play the second time because we have already watched the cutscene. So now I'm going to start damaging down because I'm not going to be fighting Pup again. So there is a way to skip Pup again, and it's very, very hard. It's actually the hardest trick in the entire game. So that's where I'm gonna be defeating the enemies because it's faster than clipping out of bounds the second time. Actually, that clip is only useful to skip the cutscene, or otherwise we want to defeat the enemies. And these enemies deal a lot of damage to Link, so I can use the Dark Nut to deal a full heart. So I'm gonna have the Dark Nut, I'm gonna manipulate him to hit me twice in order to damage down. And I need to damage down because the trick that I'm going to be using to skip Pup again is it's called a zombie hover. So when you go to 0 health, there's a certain frame window where you can perform a jump slash, and that jump slash will be canceled. All of your jump slashes are canceled after 1 frame when you have 0 health. So I can use that to repetitively press B mid-air to do mid-air jump slashes to gain indefinite height. But you have to mash very, very quickly. So there, I cut down Pup again in strings in order so that he can't hit me while I'm zombie hovering. And here, I'm going to repetitively jump slash. Now, this is very important that I mash fast enough, because right now I'm on a timer. I need to reach the top of the room before the keys spawn, which actually, if I cut down those strings, it makes it so that it takes them longer to spawn. So it gives me more wiggle room. I have to mash around 13 to 14 times per second, which is very, very difficult, considering that for one, that's very, very hard on your hands to mash for that long. And you have to mash for about a minute straight here. 2, if you mash too quickly, it'll start dropping inputs because the button has to be released and pressed on alternate frames. And so 15 times per second ends up being the fastest you can mash because the frame rate is 30 times per second. So you have to be very, very precise with your presses and releases. So at a certain time, I'm going to drop a bomb, anticipating the keys to spawn. And I need to press leaf on the very correct frame so the bomb pushes me directly backwards. And this is a frame perfect leaf press, which I get right here. And then I have to drop right as the bomb explodes and then hover up and hope I get a heart drop in a correct direction, which I do. And I can pull leaf because I'm midair, and I skip Pup again. So this is the hardest trick in the entire game. I just want to reiterate how hard this trick is. This trick took me a good 20-30 attempts of runs that failed before getting it. This is a trick where I fail about 90% of the time because of either the mashing or because of the RNG. The keys can knock you down. There's a lot of things that can go wrong in this trick. So a lot of runs were lost to this trick. A lot of runs. So took me a very long time to get it. Very, very proud that I got it. And so at this point, there is one more thing we have to do to beat the game. So this time we got to the top platform by skipping Pup again. I don't want to do it again. So I opened the warp pot so that I can take it to the top of the room. So that's very useful because I don't want to skip Pup again twice. But once again, we have to get to that platform, and normally you're supposed to have hookshot to that platform. But instead, I'm going to perform a zombie hover, but this is going to be a different one. So we have to zombie hover to gain that height. This time we're going to heal using a morph, which is way more consistent than the keys, and faster too, because we can take the warp pot this time instead of zombie hovering all the way to the top of the room. And so now you see why I got leaf, because for one, I need to shoot elemental arrows at these morphs, and I'm going to be leafing them. So I'm going to hit a morph and have it latch onto me in the same frame as it dies. And then that's important because normally morphs don't drop hearts unless they're stabbed by the Master Sword. When I get it onto this platform, I need to shoot it with an arrow, which normally doesn't make it drop a heart. However, because it's in this state, it will drop a heart. So I'm going to use leaf to blow it onto the platform and get it into a certain position so that I can shoot it with an arrow and then very, very quickly zombie hover and land on the heart so I can heal. Okay, that's good enough. And that allows me to have health on the top platform, preventing me from dying, and that allows me to enter it. And because I skipped the cutscene with pause storage, there is no cutscene this time. So simply we'll just go fight Ganondorf and beat the game. So there we go, final fight of the game. I do want to mention I was really nervous for this fight, so I did kind of mess up. This was the biggest mistake of the entire run here. This would have been 44 minutes, but I messed up. I was supposed to do a jump slash quick spin, but I I was supposed to side hop, but I backflipped instead, which doesn't deal as much damage as a regular jump slash quick spin. So I had to settle for a much slower phase, and there's a 1 cycle you can do on phase 2, but my position was off because of my mistake on phase 1, which made the time loss end up adding up even more. So this was a 30-second time loss, unfortunately costing me the 44, but I'll get it one day. Yeah. Yup, this is so bad. Okay. You have to be very careful in this fight because you have 1 heart because of the Morph Hover. So if I take 1 hit from Ganondorf, I'm dead. And from Zelda. Either way, if you get hit, you're dead. There we go. The final parry, and that's it. That's Wind Waker HD any percent. Beat it in 45 minutes and 16 seconds. I put chat on screen here because I'm really happy. So I hope you guys enjoyed the speedrun. I hope this explanation helped clear it up a bit more. If you enjoy watching Wind Waker HD speedruns, definitely go follow people who run this game. Go follow this game. Go watch it. Go play it. Go try it. This is an amazing speedrun, and I'm really happy to have showed this off to you today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.